Hi everyone, welcome back to the Cockpit project, and if you remember in the last video what we did was we replaced the potentiometer in the working throttle I've got. However, I do have a second throttle and this one's going to get some serious modifications. So let me just show you, because I didn't go that far into it last time, show you how the throttle's constructed. So this is the actual throttle handle itself. This is the arm, which is, assume that's ABS plastic. Just thread this through here. So normally this ribbon, these cables here are in a single ribbon cable, but I've separated them and you'll see why in a second. So that screws in there through these three bolts or holes there. There's three bolts. See if I can find them, which I can't. Oh yes, there we are. No I can't. Okay. Okay, so there's three bolts go in there, and then this plate. So the ribbon cable threads inside the actual axle body and out through this slot here. So I'll just do it one bit just to show you. So it's flat against this surface, and then this metal plate screws on top of that, hiding the ribbon cable underneath. Yeah, quite a nice design. Not really impressed with the use of plastic, but so for cost purposes, yeah, okay, that's okay. But anyway, so we've dismantled all of that, and there are then 4 screws on the bottom of this, holding essentially the two halves of this metal throttle handle together, and you can crack those apart to get the two halves. So what we have in here is, this is just slider switches for dogfight and speed brake, etc. If you were using this as an F16 controller, are just toggle switches which are housed onto these plastic housings here, which have little lugs that you can actually just pull the switches out first. So you can pull the switches out, but and that one's just a latched 3-position switch. I think it's off in the centre and then on in both directions, so they can stick there. This one's slightly different. This is off in the middle, but one of the positions essentially has a spring return on it, so if you let go of essentially of the slider on the body, it will ping back to the central position, so it's kind of momentary one way and latched to the other. So that's those. Then we've got 2 analogue axes on the throttle. So we've got our, what would be the antenna elevation, and then the antenna range for the radar on an F16. This one's got a small detent in the middle somewhere. I can feel it. It's nearly gone actually. This one similarly has a detent in the middle, but it also has a push button, and there's actually 2 pots, look on there. So we'll be removing those now. What you do have, and I'm just going to take this out for the moment, is, and this is the one we're interested in. I'll just thread that back through there like that. So this is a 4-way, I think that's a radio switch. Yeah, there you go. It controls VHF, UHF, and identification through and fro. So it's a 4-way switch. It's custom made actually. There are tiny little micro switches inside here, this plastic housing, which the stick then presses up against. So they've made that from scratch. I don't think that's been made for them by any company. Most of these are CTS parts, by the way. So we're pulling that out, and then of course here, and I'll just get the original, you have the, and I need to move the wiring out of the way, you have the thumbstick pot which sits in there, and there's a, see if I can get it in the right place, and then there's a wedge that fits in these slots here and holds this steady, and then you've got your thumb joystick there. Now, as I said before, this joystick is pretty much exactly the same as an Xbox stick, so it's got two pots for each axis, look, and the only difference really is that they've mounted it on a little PCB, and the micro switch, when you push it in, is actually buried underneath here rather than on the side there, and I can't really see any reason for that, to be honest. I'm not sure why they didn't mould this so it took a, you know, standard Xbox, because that's a £15 component from Thrustmaster, and that's less than £1 off of eBay. So quite a saving. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we are going to take all these switches out, and we need to make essentially some kind of mount for an analog stick there, and also, just move that out of the way, an analog stick here to replace the micro switch version that was, there you go, that one there, for the radio switch. So for Elite Dangerous, for example, I'm going to have this one for selecting stuff, and I can swap it out with the cheap version, which will be good in the future, and this one will be essentially another separate set of axes, analog axes, which I can use for lateral and vertical thrust. Right, so let's get rid of all this stuff to start with, and we need to get rid of these, so I just need to get some tools and then we can start working on that. Actually, we'll use this here, see if I can get this. So those are standard split shaft potentiometers, and you can take the handles off, and then it's just a case of me grabbing a spanner and undoing these. Okay, it's 13mm, I suspect it's 1/2 inch actually, but close enough. Just undo the two nuts. And to wriggle those out of there, probably have to redo all the hot glue and put that back in. We don't need those anymore, we'll put those to one side for now. And there's our shell. Now these switches here just slide out. Right, so we need to get these plastic holders. They've got a couple of tabs essentially, which need pushing in so that they can unlatch. I'm going to use one of my favourite tools, which is the vein clamps, arterial clamps. Get these from Amazon, they're absolutely brilliant. Now, I don't know if that's showing up in the camera, let me just make sure that's central. So these got tabs here, and they're notoriously fragile, especially when you're throttle is as old as this one is. What I might try and do is see if I can perhaps replace these with a milled aluminium version, because these are not very robust. You can repair them, the tabs, with super glue if you're careful, but they're not brilliant. Broken one there, look. So I'll have to repair that one or glue them back in when we're finished. So we'll keep that to one side, make sure we don't lose them. Okay, so that's pretty much almost stripped down apart from, there's a couple of nuts in there, and then there's one in the other side there. So basically what we need is a way of, and I've just used a bit of blue tack here just to hold this one in place previously, but we need a way of holding that stick in there. Let's just see how much movement we've got. Yeah, that's pretty central. And it seems to work that way. We'll have to watch the connectors on the back, but I think we've got enough to work with. And we also need to mount that one in there, which I think is going to go that way as well. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to take a mould of the inside of the throttle with these two potentiometer units in place. So what we'll do is I'm going to glue these into place, probably use super glue. We'll then block off all the holes, the remaining holes in here, put the other side on, maybe put a bit of wax. I've got some moulding wax which I'll show you in a minute, and then we'll pour essentially some silicone moulding compound into this unit, wait till that sets, pull it apart again and take the lump of silicone out, which will come off with the two pots, and then it's basically a case of cutting that silicone down so that we've got two master shapes to use for the inside. Sounds a bit of a palaver, but what it does mean is I will have a master shape that I can essentially mould into rigid plastic for two inserts that will hold these in place. The only bit I'm going to have to be a little bit careful about, make some adjustments on, is probably where the micro switch is, if the silicone actually gets into that piece. Actually, before we start as well, I'm going to clean degrease essentially the inside of this, because I mean obviously these kind of electronic components are notorious for having shipping grease and crap in them from the manufacturing process, so we'll do that first. We've super glued this one in, it's nice and central, that's fine. This one is a bit of a pain. I've had to set it back, otherwise the other side of the handle won't fit properly, and to do that I've used, I'll show you this stuff. This is a mould making wax. It's basically just a sheet of wax. It's fairly hard, it's also adhesive on one side, but if you work it, it becomes soft and pliable. It's quite useful for gap filling and stuff. So I've just got to, what I've done here is just attach some to the front of this to set it back a bit, and then trimmed up around the edges a little. And what we'll do is we'll put it in here and mould the wax essentially to fill the gap up, and also stick it in place so that the potentiometer doesn't move. Right, similarly I'm probably going to use the wax to plug off these other holes. Just put the screws back in here to clamp this back together, and we should be ready to pour some silicone down there. Right, what I'm using is a Smooth-On product, which is a platinum silicone rubber, and it looks like it's a 1-to-1 ratio mix, so it looks like we've got a part A and part B, and we'll need to mix some of that up. This stuff's a lot thicker than I expected. Right, here goes. I think what we'll do is we'll just dump it in there. Oh yeah, you might be able to see just in there. That's about half full up. I think that's about right. That's probably going to have filled to where we need it to. Okay, we'll just leave that now for 6 hours to dry. Right, many hours later, it's cured. I suppose we better try and get it open. There we go. Bit of a struggle we got there in the end. Got our 2 pop joystick units in there. We won't be using those again because the silicone's got all in the mechanism, look, but always thought they were going to be sacrificial. And we just need to cut this away, which is a bit of a waste really, because you've got quite a good replica of the stick there. It's got me thinking. Okay. Right, I think the trick here is to work out which bits we can cut away, still leaving enough essentially to support the pot in the end. Yeah, we don't want to take too much away, but we obviously want to get rid of as much as we can, especially at the back where we've got to put the pot unit into the back, if you like, of the collar that we're making here. Okay, that's what we were looking for. We're looking for essentially like a collar with the pot terminals exposed on the back. Might need to do a little bit more trim up on this. Right, and oh, there we are. And we've exposed the potentiometer unit again. About half an hour later, made the two pieces with two moulds essentially. We can take the wax off now. Coming, we push him in from the back. There we go. Quite sure why. Ah, that's okay. So we'll need a bit of clear up. But we do at least have the shape. So that should make that one, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark which way the pot unit sits, because the idea is that actually what I'll do, if we set that on there, put the pot unit back into the hole in the middle, and then essentially, because these are scrap now, but we can use them essentially as the plug in the middle. So basically all I need to do is build a box up around this again, pour the silicone in around this, then cut it away, and that essentially make a replica. I need to trim some of this around as well. If I decide to try and get brave and use some mould release agent and then use a hard plastic, what I'll need to do is I'll need to make sure any of these overhangs are got rid of before we do that, otherwise we'll get locked in there and we'll never get it out again. In fact, we'll try that, we'll have a think about it, come back in a sec, and we'll see if we can make a replica of these. Okay, so we've got our two moulds essentially. Small issue is the fact that we've got various indents and gaps on the side here, and also this micro switch, where if we're moulding in plastic like this white plastic here, that will lock this into place and we will never pull that out. So what I've done is use a bit of car body filler, Bondo as people call it, and just covered in those. And what I'll do now is, now that's dry, is I'll use a series of probably small files and a bit of sandpaper just to smooth that off, so that what we can do is we've got an object then which matches, you know, a working pot unit, but then we can just pull out afterwards, or at least that's the theory. Right, bit of a moment of truth here. Let's just show you what we've done. We've got the mould itself. Now I've filled in a few rough spots with some moulding wax, and also used a Carnauba mould release wax as well. So I've coated the inside of this mould now with the Carnauba wax, and also given this a good coating with Carnauba wax, and that should allow me to get that out. So we're going to put that in. I'm going to try it with this one first, and providing this works and doesn't destroy the mould, then I can proceed to do this one. This one's already prepped up, ready to go, but I'm only going to do one at a time. The stuff we're using for this is Smooth On, what's it called? Smooth Cast 300. It's essentially a liquid plastic, 2-part, and we will basically, I'm just eyeballing this. There's what looks like essentially a resin, and a more liquid hardener, and it mixes on a 1-to-1 ratio. So just eyeball that there. Coffee stirrers, great for doing mixing stuff like this. You just dump one into the other. Let's see if we can get that on camera. And then we just stir it in. You've got about, I think it's 15 minutes before this stuff. No, we've only got 3 minutes of pot life for this, so we've got to get it in there in 3 minutes. So give it a good stir. And I should be wearing nitrile gloves, but hey ho. Now, having already used this, obviously you can tell when it goes, because it will turn from this clear liquid into, you'll see it go opaque and white as it sets. It's exothermic as well. Okay, let's see if we can demold this. There we go, bit of cleanup required. so I get on with that. Bit of adjustment later, but we've got our inserts now slightly filed, sanded, so they fit properly. This one's also in place, and what I've done is I did try this switch on here, but there's not enough space available to move the stick in this direction. So what I've done is I've taken one of an old kind of controller stick and taken the head off of it, and we'll use that instead. Actually, it's more comfortable anyway, and that gives us a better range of movement. This one's still got the original stick on, thumbstick, and that's fine. We'll leave that on there. And the throttle closes up now. Good thing is I've obviously got the moulds. I'll make a few little adjustments to those, but I can turn those out if I do any others. All that we need to do now is I need to stick these inserts in place and then get on with the wiring, but this video is probably going to have gone on way too long, so what I'll do is I'll call it there, and in the next part in this series I'll get on with wiring this, because also we've got to replace the control board from the Thrustmaster Cougar with a new control board, so I'll be showing that as well in the next video. So thanks for watching as ever, and I'll see you on the next one.